good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. We have got a wonderful lineup of topics for this week. Being today's Tuesday, we're kicking it off with, as you can see down there somewhere, there it is, right there. We're going to be talking about only murders in the building. And then tomorrow, we are going to take a look at the former Avenger and Eternal Star Fox, also known as Eros, do a deep dive into that character. And, well, you probably know why, but if you don't, you're really good at staying off the internet. And then Thursday, being that we got the holiday coming up, we're going to take a deep dive into Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb's amazing comic series, Batman: The Long Halloween. We're also going to talk about the two-part animated movie they just did about it and how the plot from that story might just be affecting the upcoming Matt Reeves' The Batman movie. So we got a great lineup for today. Hit the subscribe and like buttons on these things so that you'll be notified when we're coming up. We've got a great lineup of shows tonight. After this, we've got Black Comic Universe with Richard Wright of Black Comic Lords. Then we've got Minute to Skim It with Miss Jen. And then Kyle will be joining me at 5 o'clock Eastern. No, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern, as we talk about the new comics in stores this week. So, like I said, today's topic is going to be only murders in the building. I keep wanting to say only murderers in the building, but it's only murders in the building. And having seen the show, I know why that title. But only murderers in the building actually is kind of cool too. But before we get into that, there's a couple news stories I thought were worth mentioning. Now, yesterday, great news. Brendan Fraser has been cast to join Leslie Grace in the Warner Brothers and the DC Films upcoming Batgirl. Now, this one is going to be directly to HBO Max. So I think they're doing a little different on casting. They're not necessarily going for the huge names because, Leslie Grace, Jacob Scipio is in it. We know that J.K. Simmons is going to be reprising his role as Commissioner Gordon. And now they're bringing in Brendan Fraser, who is currently in the DCU as Robot Man on Doom Patrol. So it's really cool to see him coming in again. Now, expectations. Now, they haven't said what he's going to play. I believe he's supposed to be a villain. And the expectation or what sources are saying is he's likely going to be playing Firefly. So, Brendan Fraser, from The Mummy, from all those great movies he did, and some of the silly ones he did, will be joining the DCU or DCEU, or whatever they're calling it now, as potentially Firefly, but he's going to be in the Batgirl series. That film's actually going to be directed by Bad Boys for Life directors Adil El Arbi and Bilal Fallah. I'm gonna have to get proper pronunciations on those names. The script is being written by Christina Hodson, and we don't really know when it's going to be coming out. It'll be sometime in the future, but again, it's going to debut on HBO Max and not in the theaters. All right. Another interesting story that popped up is, you guys remember the Dark Universe? Universal was going to relaunch all of their Universal monsters and stuff. Nathan Fillion should have been Firefly, but that's just so I can make jokes. I thought of that too as I was putting that article together, that it should have been Nathan Fillion, but Brendan Fraser works too. Okay. So, the Dark Universe was this great idea they had. They were going to make this interconnected universe based on the Universal monsters. So, there was going to be Dracula Lives or Dracula Unbound or whatever it was with Luke Evans. And that could have tied in. It might not have. They weren't sure. But it was tentatively going to tie in. And then they had the Tom Cruise Mummy movie. And they went, God, that sucks. We're out. So the Dark Universe is officially dead now, as Universal is moving forward with a new Wolfman movie, and they're actually going to have Ryan Gosling playing the Wolfman. Now, this is interesting. This is the second Ryan Gosling news of recent. Last week, it was discovered that he's going to be playing Ken in the Barbie movie with Margot Robbie. So he's going to be the Wolfman and he's going to be Ken. And the reason that the Wolfman's in the news is they're zeroing in on a director now. They're in talks with Derek Cianfrance, who worked with Gosling on both Place Beyond the Pines and Blue Valentine. So now he's replacing Leah Whannell, who ended up parting ways with the project earlier this year due to scheduling. So Gosling, Ken Kao, and Jason Blum are all producing. So, Jason Blum has been producing a ton of horror movies over the years. So it's interesting to see him attached to this. It's going to be different, though. They did the Benicio del Toro version with Anthony Hopkins. I don't remember how long ago that was, but it was a while ago. But that was more of a period piece. This one's expected to be more of a modern take on the Wolfman. And if it does well, then maybe this will be the start of some other kind of version of the Dark Universe. But they were going with Tom Cruise, and Johnny Depp was going to be the Invisible Man, and they had this whole thing planned out, and that seems to be dead now. So we're going to get a Ryan Gosling Wolfman movie. Kind of interesting. I'm a fan of the Universal monster movies. I'd like to see them come back. I like to see them have a bigger presence, but they got to be done right. And I didn't hate the Tom Cruise movie. I watched it. It was entertaining to me. I saw the universe they were trying to build and found it interesting enough that I would have gone to the next movie, but I wouldn't have run out and tell everybody, "Oh, you got to go see this movie. It's awesome." No, it was all right. They could have done something with it, but it's gone now. So we're not going to worry about it. Move on with Ryan Gosling. Also, of course, everybody is talking about Dune. Dune still pulled in $40 million on the weekend box office domestically at a time where you could also see it for free on HBO Max. Now, you have to be a subscriber to HBO Max, but there's no additional charge. Like how Disney Plus does that. They'll put a movie out, and then you got to pay a premium fee. This one, basic HBO Max, you get Dune. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I haven't had 2.5 hours or whatever it is to sit down, but I'm going to do that this week. But the big news is that Legendary tweeted out, "This is only the beginning. Thanks to those who have experienced Dune movie so far and those who are going in the days and weeks ahead. We're excited to continue the journey." And they posted an image that just says Dune Part 2. So that's them saying, yep, we're doing a sequel, which was in question because the day and date release stuff that Warner Brothers has been doing through HBO Max hasn't really been going over well. The James Gunn, the Suicide Squad movie was well received by fans and critics, and you'd think immediately would have got a green light. But box office on it was horrible because people went, I can see it right here on my TV. Why do I need to go to the theater? Now, I think people are getting more accustomed to going back to the movies. I think Shang-Chi and Venom helped do that. The new James Bond helped do that. So these films that are being in the theater only are getting people accustomed to going back to the theater, which is important. But the fact that they went ahead and did this, I think they could have given it a 2-week window, a 4-week window, something, before putting it for free on HBO Max. But nope, they went ahead and did the day and date release on it. And while it still pulled 40 million here in the States, it did better overseas where it's theatrical only and pulled in another 200,000 roughly. It was over 200,000 globally. So I'm hoping this may be, as much as I appreciate being able just to watch the movie on my screen, big screen, here or on the computer or whatever. I think we need to get them back in the theaters because there's some movies that just need the big screen. And from everybody I'm talking to who has seen Dune, they are glad they went to the theater to see it because it's this huge space epic. And it shouldn't be on a TV screen for your first viewing. It should be in the theater. So, and if any of you have seen it, let me know what you think. Do you think you would have been okay with watching it on TV as opposed to the theater? Did you see it on TV and it was fine? Do you wish you would have seen it in the big screen? Let me know about that. I'm kind of curious what people's reactions to it are. So, all right. Before we move on, let me remind you guys, we have Instagram and TikTok where we are _experience or EXP1. Follow us there to see what's coming up. We're doing a lot of stuff over there, so you want to check that out. Also, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. We're still trying to build up like the YouTube account. If we can get to 1,000 subscribers, that opens up a whole new thing of tools that we can use to make this network better. So help us out. Hit the like and subscribe buttons, and I greatly appreciate it. All right. We are going to move into probably one of the most unique television series that I've seen in a while. And you can tell by the topic, which is over. Damn it, I keep doing this. Over right here. It's here. There. This is going to be like the Black Comic Universe versus Black Comic University. It's going to take me a while to figure out how to arrange stuff. But, all right. So, Only Murders in the Building. I had wanted to see it since it debuted, but I was going to watch it with Lisa, and we had a bunch of different events and stuff going on. So every time we would get together, we were over at this person's house for a birthday or going out to the movies with that person for their birthday. I mean, we went like 3 or 4 birthdays in a row. So there was even a cat birthday in there that took up an entire Saturday. So we didn't really get a chance to sit down and watch it until about 2 weeks ago. It came on, and we sat down and watched 8 of the episodes in a row. And where I'm a big proponent of the weekly releases, I think this one, maybe do it in chunks is kind of cool because you really get into it. And by the time we got to episode 8 and it was like, well, what's going to happen? And then the following week we got episode 9 and then we got the finale. So there was a little bit of that anticipation we got, but we also got a huge chunk of the story to get us really involved. And that worked out really well. It's a really unique show. Now, I've pulled together some basic setup on it, and then we'll talk more freestyle once I go through this. But the series was created by Steve Martin and John Hoffman, and it consisted of 10 episodes that debuted on August 31st. Now, it's obvious that the series was created for Steve Martin and Martin Short as the leads. This made sense as the two have been working together as a comedy team for a while now, but it would be hard-pressed to see anybody else play in these roles, at least the Martin Short role. And the interaction between Short and Steve Martin is just really brilliant. You see it when they do specials and they do interviews. If you've caught, I think Netflix or Hulu, one of them had their comedy special, and there is this biting sarcasm between the two of them that is really good and funny, and they bring that into the show. So if you're a fan of the two of them interacting, or if you saw them on one of these interview shows, they were both on Bill Maher. They've been popping up all over the place. That rapport that they have naturally, where they kind of pick on each other, that continues into the series, and it makes sense. I mean, it fits. So if you like their comedy working together, you're going to like this. It's kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of, and this is dating myself, but back when we had more comedy duos, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, the Marx Brothers, stuff like that. The comedy teams that would do these movies. And even though the movies were all different, the duo, the interaction and stuff were really similar. JD, I was going to mention Cheech and Chong on that, and I've been thinking about them. The thing is with Cheech and Chong is, no, I'm with you on that. Cheech and Chong is another good example of that. I grew up on the one of the albums, and was just talking to my nephew last night about the drive-in thing where they get the guys stuck in the car, in the trunk of the car, because they were sneaking to the drive, and they go to the concession stand to get a crowbar, and he ends up coming back with a couple different candy bars. They no, man, they didn't have a crowbar, but I got a Snickers and a Zagnut. And Abbott and Costello is another great example. So yeah, Martin and Martin is what they're calling themselves. Steve Martin and Martin Short are a great comedy duo, and they just bring that chemistry into this. And then they bring in Selena Gomez, which really surprised me. I don't know much about Selena Gomez. I think she was on like Wizards of Waverly Place, and I know she's a singer. Not exactly my kind of music. Never watched Wizards of Waverly Place or whatever the shows she's been on. So I've knew of her, but it was an interesting dynamic because you have these two older comedic actors, and then you bring in this younger actress, but she merges in with them perfectly, a lot like Hope and Bob Hope and Bing Crosby, or the Marx, where they had these female actresses, or these actresses that would come in and play off of them, or even Monty Python had an actress that came in and played off of them, that really brings that out. It's a different type of dynamic, and it changes it. And they play straight, but they play it in a way to bring out the best in the comedic actors. And I think it worked well here, which shows to show this is an incredibly well-written series. I think that's the standout from this, that it is really well written. Now, the show was initially announced in January of last year without a title. It was just an unnamed Steve Martin Short series. They added Selena Gomez in August of 2020. And then Aaron Dominguez, Amy Ryan, and then eventually Nathan Lane all joined the cast. And then filming started in December of 2020 and went through April of 2021. And if you're curious, if you live in New York and you want to see what the fictional Arcona building looks like in real life, it's called the Belnord. So if you find the Belnord building in New York, that's the Arcona. Now, interesting thing here is the series has been renewed for a second season. But I'm guessing that it was pretty much a lock from the beginning, because when the show debuted at the end of August, it wasn't renewed until September. But the first season ends on a cliffhanger, and we'll talk about that later. I'm going to try to avoid spoilers, at least for a part of the show, and then when I get to spoilers, we'll do the warning. But so it ends on a cliffhanger, and now you might think they could have added to that during reshoots or something like that, or they had two different endings. Oh, if we get picked up, we'll do this ending. If we don't, then we'll do this ending. Possible. But one or two of the moments from the cliffhanger ending are in the initial trailer. If you've seen the trailer, if you haven't seen the show, but you've seen the trailer, you see the two characters, Martin and Martin, on the roof and they both get texts telling them to get out of the building, exclamation point, and then you see them running down the stairs. That's from the very end of the season. I mean, basically that is part of the cliffhanger. And they show that in the trailer. So, yeah, trailers do suck these days. I'll admit there are some good trailers, but a lot of trailers either give away too much. In this case, I remember starting watching the finale on Saturday and thinking, there's that one scene we haven't seen where they start running down the stairs after someone tells them to get out of the building. I wonder if that's going to be in the finale. And then I get through the whole episode, and then suddenly we get to the very ending, and I'm like, oh, it's going to be here. So it's really strange that they waited but it's a funny scene of them, going down the stairs. So it's in the trailer for that, but it's obvious that this was probably in, we're going to do 2 seasons, whatever, but we'll do the normal rigmarole to say, oh, yes, we're renewing it, because either that or they were planning on ending on a cliffhanger regardless of renewal. But I got the feeling it's kind of like when you go to a rock concert and the band leaves the stage and then everybody applauds and screams and stuff, and they come out for an encore because the fan wants them. You've never gone to one of the things where the audience is quiet and the band never comes back out, right? It's all set up. So, yeah, so I think it was always in the cards it was going to be renewed. Plus, would you, if you were Hulu, turn down a Steve Martin and Martin Short series if they said, well, we want at least 2 seasons, wouldn't you give it to them? Because even if it's not that good, it's on Hulu. Hulu doesn't have that many groundbreaking series, So the odds were it's going to be one of the best shows on Hulu, even if it was bad. All right, that may be rude, but Hulu doesn't have a lot of great stuff. It's got some good stuff, but let's see. Kyle says, if 0 people watched and it cost me $1 bajillion, I would still give them whatever they want. Depends if the show comes up short. All right, JD's busting out the comedy today. All right, now we're going to talk about the premise now. The premise, it seems very straightforward. On the surface, when a fire alarm causes the Arcona to be evacuated, most of the residents, they end up at this restaurant nearby. And of course, all these people are evacuating, so the restaurant fills up quickly and all the tables get filled. And the 3 main actors really don't know each other. They've seen each other in the elevator. They rode up in the elevator at the beginning of the show, and then later it gets evacuated. Well, the three of them end up being forced to share a table together because it gets overrun. But they bond over their common obsession with true crime podcasts. And that's very important to this whole series. And a lot of people are obsessed with true crime podcasts. So that's pretty topical right now in these shows and stuff. So it's kind of interesting. But Steve Martin plays Charles Hayden Savage, a semi-retired actor who starred in this 90s cop series called Brazos. Short plays Oliver Putnam, a financially struggling Broadway director who had this huge flop. And it's more than just a flop because there was going to be this swimming pool on the stage, and these people were going to dive into the swimming pool in a live Broadway show. The problem is that the mechanics that opened the pool didn't. And the actors still went ahead, or the dancers still did the dive and just flopped onto the ground and then screamed in pain. But they just kept going, all of them, because the show must go on. So yeah, he had a huge Broadway flop, and he's never really recovered from it. Now Gomez, she plays Mabel Mora, and she's a young woman living in and remodeling her aunt's apartment. Now, she used to live in the building when she was younger during the summers, but so you would go and stay with her aunt during the summers. Yeah, JD, a Broadway belly flop. Was the flop called Springtime? No, it was not Bialystok and Bloom. Yeah. Oddly enough, Nathan Lane is in this series, who plays Bialystok in the more recent version of For the Producers. Nice callback there. So that's Mabel. So you got Mabel, Charles, and Oliver. Those are your three main guys. And what they discover is that the fire alarm was pulled and a body is found. And the three of them had actually ridden up in the elevator with the victim earlier that night. So they go back and they find out, and they find a way to sneak into the building, and they go up and they try to check out the crime scene and stuff. And by the end of it, they decide they should do their own true crime podcast to cover the murder in their own building. Now, Short sees this as a chance to make some money because, he needs it. He's on the verge of losing his apartment. He hasn't had any kind of success in a long time. So that's what he sees it as. Where Martin sees it as kind of a chance to become relevant again. He hasn't been getting very many acting gigs. He's only known for his 90s TV series. So this is his chance. But Gomez, she knew the victim. And there's this tragedy that happened in the building a decade before that is somehow tied to this. So where Short and Martin have their own personal reasons to do it for themselves, Gomez actually knew the victim, though we don't find that till later on. But there's a reason she wants to solve this, and it ties into a decades-old murder. Now, from there we get to meet the rest of the building is filled with fun and bizarre cast of characters like you would in this kind of series, most of whom live in the building as well. Now, there's Jan, played by Amy Ryan, and she's the first chair bassoonist in the local Philharmonic, and she ends up in a relationship with Steve Martin's character. There's Oscar, played by Dominguez, a former friend of Mabel and of the victims, who just got out of jail the day before the death. And he was in jail for basically causing the murder a decade before. Yep, JD, you're right. Murderers usually do know the victims on a personal level. And it's kind of the case here, but not in the way you think. Who else is there? There's Ursula, the building manager, Will, Oliver's son, Tim Kono, the murder victim, Cinda Canning, who's the host of the true crime podcast that they're all listening to, and she's played by Tina Fey. Nice cameo. Well, a little more than a cameo, but a nice role for her. There's Bunny, this crass and iron-fisted head of the Arcona Residence Board, or whatever you call that. She's basically the leader of all of them, and nobody likes her. There's Teddy DeMoss, a friend and former backer of Oliver's. He backed the big flop, and he owns a series of delis and stuff. And then he's played by Nathan Lane. And there's a lot of backstory for this character, so there's some meat to that character. Then he's got a son named Theo, who's deaf, and that I'll get to that in a minute. But it really plays interestingly into the story, at least in one particular episode. There's Howard, who's this crazy cat guy who has had 6 cats, all named Evelyn, and Evelyn also dies the night of the murder, and he keeps her in his freezer. Yeah. There's Nadidi, another neighbor who, as soon as Tim is dead, wants his apartment. she lives on the same floor, and she wants to basically merge the two into one big apartment. And there's Dr. Grover Stanley, a psychiatrist or psychologist, and he sees everything as an opportunity to get more patients. He takes Bitcoins and cryptocurrency. He's online. He's fun. There's also a couple great guest stars that pop up. None in multiple. They're really just in one or two episodes. But Jane Lynch comes in and plays Martin's stunt double from his days on Brazos, and she's a hoot. And they play it like the two of them are like dead ringers, and it's really funny. And Sting plays himself as a resident of the building and formerly in business with the victim. So in the trailer, you see, we think the killer is musical artist Sting. Well, there is a point where he is a suspect. And then probably the most important character from outside of the building is Detective Williams, played by Divine Joy Randolph. And while they don't do a lot with her here, we get a little bit of her backstory, her home life. I get the feeling that she's going to be a bigger part of season 2. So she's kind of involved, but not a lot. It's the three main stars are the key characters. Now, okay, before we go on any further, we should probably do our quick commercial break, and then we'll get into some spoiler talk on this. So, be right back.
Hey, I'm Garrett Gunn. You might know me from Good Boy, Warhorns, Franklin and Ghost, and you're watching The Experience.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show. We are talking about Only Murders in the Building. And before we get back into it, let me remind you that we have a great lineup of shows today. Black Comic Universe is coming up right after us, then Minute to Skim It with Miss Jen, and then I'll be back with Kyle talking about the new books in stores this week. And I've read some good books this week that we're going to be talking about, and I've read a clunker too. So come join us for that. All right. Also, please hit the like and subscribe buttons when you get a chance. Share the links if you think the show's any good, that kind of stuff. I'd appreciate it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and have the spoiler thing run, just in case. So, Kyle, if you would. All right. So this whole thing happens. They find the body. One of the things that really I found interesting about the show that I really liked was that each episode was narrated by a different person. It does it for all 10 episodes. Sometimes it's one of the three mains. It's the detective. The final episode is actually narrated by the victim, by Tim Kono. But the one that really got me was, I think it's the 7th episode. It's narrated in a way by Theo, who's deaf. And it's a silent episode. He does some sign language, and they do the closed captions so you can see what he's saying. But other than that, it's all done with like a couple sound effects. And I think Steve Martin says something at the very end, and it's not even words, it's more of a sound. So it's a fascinating episode. To do an entire half hour of television without any dialogue at all is fascinating to me. And it works really well. But it also is the episode that's mainly flashbacks, and we get to see what happened to what was her name? Zoe from the past, who was the first victim like a decade before. And we see that there was these different teenagers growing up in the building. It was Mabel coming in to visit her aunt during the summer. It was Tim, who lived in the building. It was Oscar, the son of the maintenance person in the building. And it was Zoe, who lived in the building. And the four of them would like go into different things and steal and stuff. And then one night she gets killed. And we find out about it in the silent episode, which again is just absolutely blew my mind. It really worked well. I, of course, being a comic guy, thought of the amazing silent interlude issue of G.I. Joe written by Larry Hama. I've heard tell that there was another series recently that did a silent episode, but I don't remember what it was. It's not one that I watched, but someone pointed that out to me. So, but I do love the idea. And that's another thing. I said a half hour of television. There are shows you watch that are a half hour long, and they get to the end, you're like, that's it? I didn't realize these were half hour episodes until like episode 7, when I stopped and went, wait, how have we gone through this many in this short a time? They don't feel like a half hour. They are full. There's no point that when they stopped, you go, no, that's too short. I mean, it just, they're great. And it might have been the fact that I watched so many in a row, but yeah, it never felt like they were only half hour episodes. It was moving, and it was good. So definitely, I really do recommend this series. Now, some of the things about the show that really stood out to me. Steve Martin is, I want to call him the lead, even though the three of them are the lead, and there is a big ensemble in it, but he's kind of our point of view character for the most part. We get the most honesty from him, which is amazing because everybody in this series lies. Early on, everybody lies. Steve Martin's character lies. Oliver is just a liar most of the time when he's trying to sell stuff. He tries to keep up the appearance of having money and doing fine and everything else when he's on the verge of losing everything. And Mabel's got secrets she's hiding. And the three of them start working together, and these lies start coming out pretty quickly. And you realize that just about everybody in the building is a liar. It's fascinating. But it kind of goes to the fact that we lie all the time. You know, we keep, whether you're just keeping personal stuff in, and, you know, how are you today? I'm good. And you're not. It's still technically a lie, but, you know, it's a perfunctory thing when somebody says, how are you? You don't really want the answer. I mean, if it's your girlfriend or your mom or something they ask, they want the real answer. But overall, people ask you, how are you? And nobody gives a hell. Nobody cares. But it's still technically a lie. So, but we, you know, Steve Martin's character quotes lines from his TV show. Like I said, Mabel is definitely hiding stuff. Oliver's hiding stuff. Though we do find out that one of the things that he quoted from his TV show is something that he actually wrote because it really happened to him, which I thought was interesting. They do an interesting job of it. It's kind of a pastiche, and it's kind of a parody. They have all the components to be this interesting murder mystery, but at the same time, they're poking fun of it. So they're doing a murder mystery, but at the same time, they're pointing out the flaws in a murder mystery or the things that you normally get. There's one point where they find outside, because they're doing this as a podcast and they're broadcasting it, they have followers, they have fans, and there are 4 fans sitting outside. Well, at one point they decide they need some help. So they go downstairs and there's only 3 at that point, but they take these 3 people up and they put out the murder board and they start going, well, what happened with this? They start going through all the plot stuff. And it's kind of like fans of shows like that, like when Lost was on, or, even WandaVision, where people were trying to guess what was happening. And, well, what about this? How come we don't find out what happened to the missing witness protection guy and stuff like that? They were bringing those things back up. And the 3 main characters who were doing the investigation was like, oh, yeah, we completely forgot about that. So that was fascinating. Also, Steve Martin gets involved with this character who he's, flirts with in elevators and finds flirting in the elevator. And he hasn't been in a relationship in a long time. So this is important to him. So again, Steve Martin is kind of the lead, with the other 2 working with him. And being that he was the cop show guy, it kind of works, but still it's tangential in the sense that each episode is really led by whoever the narrator is. But it works. Like I said, it doesn't get lost, and it doesn't feel like we're just bouncing around to all these different people. The 3 mains are still the 3 mains. Brian, yeah, episode 7, I was talking about that just a little while ago. That is, the silent episode is absolutely brilliant. I don't remember what the title of it is. I think I have it up. Nope, I closed that window. It is a really amazing episode. But overall, the murder itself is fascinating because there's layers, and they keep moving the suspect. There really is an episode where they believe Sting is the killer because Tim Kono, we find out that Tim had lost somebody a fortune on the stock market. And then we discover it's actually Sting, the boy from 6B. Thank you. It's actually Sting who lost his money. And originally it's believed that Tim Kono killed himself. And Sting is acting guilty. Well, our 3 main characters think it's a murder, are pretty sure it's a murder. It's still believed by everybody else to be a suicide. And Sting is acting guilty because he feels guilty. He feels like that loss and how he got angry at Tim about it is what caused him to kill himself. And then when they discover that it was actually a homicide, Sting is relieved, and it kind of takes away his him being the suspect. And they go through quite a few characters like that. At one point they think it's the crazy cat guy because they think Tim poisoned the cat. Well, the thing is that in a normal murder mystery, the cat being poisoned, the cat who wanders the building and gets into everybody's apartments and stuff, that would have been a huge clue. Sherlock Holmes would have been like, there are no coincidences, Watson. We need to figure out why the cat was murdered, and it ties into the death of Tim Kono. That would have been the thing. they they immediately think that the suspect, that the cat guy is the suspect, and then once they realize he can't stand the sight of blood and stuff like that, they take him off the list, but they forget the fact that the cat had been poisoned and was dead, which is a huge clue, that ties into later on. But that's the thing, is that these guys aren't professionals, and they're kind of flopping their way through this, and they almost solve it by accident. I mean, they're persistent and they keep after it, and they do find some interesting clues, and by the end they do break the case. But they also accidentally discover a jewelry thing, and fencing for jewelry, and Nathan Lane suddenly is a criminal, and we find out who the murderer of Zoe is, and that it doesn't. The death a decade before, again, we got the spoiler banner up, so the death a decade before ends up having nothing to do with the murder, which most regular murder mysteries would have made, well, the actual killer was related to the girl that died. And Lisa, that was Lisa's theory, that she knew who the murderer was. She figured out who the murderer was, but thought that they were related to the dead girl from a decade before. And that would have made a lot of sense. It was a great theory. No. Turned out, no, the killer was just psychotic. It's pretty much it. The killer was just psychotic. So the two deaths in this building were technically unrelated. We do find out who really killed Zoe, and that poor Oscar spent all that time in jail for nothing. But we knew he was innocent, or at least it was proposed that he was innocent. Something the show does consistently. This was the fine line. Like I said, they had all the components for a strong murder mystery, and they could have just done it as a straight murder mystery. Steve Martin's character would have worked in a murder mystery. Mabel would have worked in a murder mystery, all down the line. Martin Short is what made it a parody. Anytime something serious happened, anytime there was a big clue or a big reveal or a tense moment, Martin Short spoke. And he would say something that would remind you this was a comedy and a parody. Like somebody would make this tear-filled, crying, just utterance of importance. It would say something really relevant, and he would stop, and suddenly he'd pipe up going, "Can we do that again?" The crying covered the dialogue, or something about, they do this whole scene where they're discovering about some information about Tim, where there's supposed to be a wake for him, and he's like stealing all the dip from the table because he lives. It's one of the weirdest quirks. He lives on dip. It's all he eats is dip. But Kyle says Martin Short is a genius, and his timing is the single greatest example of comedy timing since Tim Conway. Yes. And wow, there is a Tim Conway, Harvey Korman feel to what Martin Short and Steve Martin are doing. There's not the breakup, the joking, or the breaking character that happens. I mean, hell, half of the fun of watching the Carol Burnett show was to see Tim Conway make everybody else lose it. Just make them bust up laughing. And Conway was a genius at that. And once he knew that they were close to the edge, he knew how to push them. I believe that. The Conway used to plan for weeks on ways to get Corman. One of my favorite stories, this is off topic, is Vicki Lawrence. Conway would always bust everybody up. And Vicki Lawrence, they were going to do this character. It's called The Elephant Sketch. It's a Mama's Family sketch. and they're sitting around, and the director comes in and says, Tim says he's going to do something a little different, but so just be ready for it. And she was fuming. And she's like, again, he's going to do something to throw us all off live. Well, yeah, the elephant sketch. Her husband was the makeup artist on the show and was there when this happened and said, then get him. Outdo him. Do something to make him lose it. And she did. He goes through this whole diatribe. You've got to look up the elephant sketch. It is one of the best moments on TV ever. But he goes through this whole diatribe. He's making everybody laugh. Carol Burnett, Vicki Lawrence, and Dick Van Dyke are all there. And they cannot finish this scene because he's telling this elephant story. And finally he gets to the point where Mama's supposed to say her line. And she looks up and she says, is that little effer finished? And it broke Conway. He fell off the couch. It is literally one of the best sketches ever. But that's off topic. Martin Short has that ability to remind you. There's this little selfishness to him. He's very narcissistic. But he can never give a compliment to Steve Martin. He's fine complimenting other people. He can schmooze them. For some reason, he can't to Steve Martin. And the two do kind of become friends. And there's this great moment in the finale where Steve Martin's character has been poisoned, but it kind of keeps him from being able to speak or move or whatever. And he's confronting the bad guy who's going to kill them. And he gallantly stands up and says, no, if you want to kill them, you have to kill me first, because these people are my friends. And I was living this half-life, but they've brought me out and they've given me the time of my life. And he gives this great speech about their friendship that they've built over this time. And you realize that he's still in the little, well, I guess it was a stroller. He's still in the stroller, still unable to move, and he's just mumbling. So it's in his mind he gave this speech. And then we cut back to, no, he never got out of the stroller. The actual murderer in this, it's pretty fascinating. From a murder mystery point of view, they do give you almost all the clues. But it doesn't have that neat, tidy cleanup that a lot of murder mysteries give you. That pure motivation and stuff. Like I said, it really comes down to the fact that, and we are in the spoilers, so I can say this, the murderer gets dumped. Doesn't like being dumped. Or, actually, no, she breaks up with him. And in doing so, when she breaks up with somebody, she kills them. That's her thing. And of course, she dates Steve Martin in this, so it is absolutely fascinating, the way they wrap it all up. And then we get that scene at the end where there's another murder. I actually knew who they were going to murder. I told Lisa, we were talking about, like, how are they going to do the sequel? Someone in the building's going to have to die. I said, it's obviously Bunny. Everybody hates Bunny. They have all these conflicts with Bunny. Bunny's going to be killed. She's like, no, they're not going to kill Bunny. They like having her as a bad guy. It'll be somebody else. It's Bunny. Bunny's murdered at the end, and the cops come in. They find our 3 stars standing over the body with blood. So, season 2, hello. They literally show them being arrested at the end of season 1. It is the weirdest ending to have, hey, we saw... Brian thought it was Bunny who's going to kill her. It was a killer, huh? For me, there wasn't a lot of plausible people, so Jan became a big suspect just because she stabbed herself and survived. And when you have somebody who gets stabbed and then survives, to me, that makes them a suspect. You know, she recovered really quickly. It was obviously wasn't that bad of an injury, and she was actually going to still be able to play her recital. So I started leaning that direction. Lisa thought maybe Jan was Zoe's mother, and the whole thing was connected. That's why she killed Tim Kono. But then it wouldn't have made sense because he didn't kill Zoe either. So Zoe. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting ending. It's a really good show. If you've stuck this long around and you've gone through the spoilers, I'm hoping you've already seen it. But if you haven't, take the time to watch it. It is a fun show. Martin and Martin are brilliant. Selena Gomez really brings a lot to the show. I'm really impressed by her and being able to keep up with those two. And it's just a fun cast. It's really enjoyable. I'm probably going to watch it. I'm probably going to wait a month or so and I'll rewatch it just to see about the pieces I missed or whatever. But all right, that's going to wrap it up for today, folks. It was fun talking about it. Tomorrow, come back. And if you know why, you know why. We'll talk with it then. But we're going to do a deep dive into the Marvel Comics character Star Fox, a.k.a. Eros, the Eternal and brother of Thanos. And then on Thursday, we're going to look at The Long Halloween, the incredible Batman series by Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb, the animated movie they just did, and how it might tie into the Batman. Thank you, Brian. You too. Take care. JD, thanks for coming in. Kyle, thanks for running the board. Stick around for Black Comic Universe starting now. Good night, everybody.